And as you earlier mentioned, there are certain class of application which are critical applications that need to be protected with some kind of high availability strategy. But what about other applications? Because yes, of course they are not critical, but them up and running is essential for some aspect. No, I mean downtime is never good. So does SIOS help only with those high class of critical applications, or also applications that are not that mission critical?
We handle a whole class of applications that I'd like to talk to you about today that require a measure of application availability, but are not at the level of criticality that we've just discussed at that high availability. They're more in the 3 nines class, where the uptime is required. Having them fail is a drain on IT resources and a nuisance, but they don't have the stringent RTO, RPO, and availability service level agreements typically associated with them.
And can you just talk a bit about some examples of what kind of applications are these?
There is that class of application, and we call it single server protection as opposed to high availability clustering. Those are how SIOS kind of divides the world of application protection. So we've up to now talked about high availability clustering as the way of protecting the very critical applications. And we do have another product that serves that secondary level of application protection.
Now, can you also explain how do they work and what makes them different?
So a high availability cluster, you are running your critical application on a given server. You have a secondary server that's designated for it. You use clustering software that is aware of both of those servers. That clustering software is monitoring the health of that application, making sure that it's running smoothly. In the event of a failure, it moves operation over to that secondary server. And to do so is a really complicated thing to try and do, because every application has a different set of requirements for how you bring that second server online. So how you do that, the boot order, the placement of services, how that's done is different for a HANA database versus a SQL Server or an Oracle or some other application. It's also a matter of moving the IP addresses from the primary server to the secondary. You can also do this with the tertiary and 4 nodes if you want, but just keep it simple. How that IP address is moved is different for each different cloud, for AWS, Azure, Google, on-premises, a virtual environment. And so you can see that it's a very complicated undertaking. And SIOS has built that these application recovery kits that automate all of those various rules and regulations, and they are application aware. So they know that HANA database requires these specific requirements to bring on bring that second server online and to fail over in a very reliable and predictable way. So that's all of the requirement for a high availability environment. We've just discussed a little bit about that second tier of application criticality that maybe doesn't require the higher RTO and RPO. And for those, we can allow you to run your application on one server. There is no secondary server, but it will detect a problem and it will reboot the application and services to see if that solves the problem. And in many cases, that solves the problem. If it does not, it will then do a full restart and reboot that whole single server. Those capabilities are built into our clustering environment, but they're also in this single server protection environment. And essentially, you're restarting the server automatically, and that will clear many, many application downtime incidents and bring you back online without touching it, without problem, and without any of the complications that you might run into.